Jerusalem. See the divine intervention in Esther's story, a journey of hope for the exiled. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, besieged Jerusalem. Amid this tumult, the captives were scattered, and among them was a young Jewish girl named Esther, raised by her cousin Mordecai. Fate led her to the opulent palace of Shushan, where she became the queen of Persia, a status born not from her will, but from the deft hand of the Almighty, who weaves destinies in silence. Yet, her royal beauty could obscure the truth that gnawed at her heart. A decree from Haman, the king's advisor, loomed dangerously, threatening the very existence of her people. The grand corridors of the palace shimmered with gold and vibrant fabrics, yet beneath their exterior beauty lay an unsettling tension among the exiled Israelites. As facets of privilege glittered around her, Esther felt the weight of her concealed Jewish identity. When Mordecai's anguished voice echoed through the city gates, beseeching her to reveal her truth and intervene with King Ahasuerus, her heart trembled. "Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for such a time as this," he implored, referencing the prophecies of old, echoing Jeremiah's hopeful declarations of restoration. Esther stood frozen, fear and despair wrapping around her like a shroud. If she approached the king unbidden, it could cost her life. The stakes of her perilous position pressed down upon her, yet Mordecai's words held firm, a reminder of Yahweh's promise that their exile would not mark the end. "Gather the Jews and fast for me," she urged, pulling strength from the depths of her sorrowed spirit. She fell to her knees, calling upon Yahweh, desperate for a glimmer of divine insight as she prepared for the monumental step awaiting her. "Though I perish, she resolved, a burden shared in prayer, a plea for clarity. As her determination ripened, she felt the stirring of purpose through her veins, a calling to act for her people. Days slipped away, filled with anticipation, dread clouding her heart as the moment approached. The glory of the throne room, with its dazzling chandeliers and marbled columns, only heightened the storm within her. Finally, at the sight of the king, she was met with his benevolent gaze, and he extended his golden scepter, granting her the audience she so desperately sought. "Come, let us feast," Esther proclaimed, her voice quivering yet resolute. This banquet, cleverly staged, would be her opportunity, a strategic move revealed only in time. Haman, engulfed in pride, accepted her invitation, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. As the banquet drew near its conclusion, Esther sensed the weight of generations resting upon her shoulders. The moment she'd feared with every ounce of her being now stood at the edge of revelation. What would she unveil? Would the truth of her people's plight ignite a spark of divine intervention, or lead to devastating darkness? The echoes of narrative and prophecy intermingled in the sacred atmosphere, drawing closer to the prophetic precision that defined her people's journey. What lay ahead was not simply an inquiry, but the next step in a divine plan, waiting to unfold in breathtaking realization. As the final morsels of food were savored, the laughter of the banquet mingled with the intoxicating aromas that filled the air. Esther, queen of Shushan, felt a tremor within her soul as she rose to deliver the request that had stirred her heart. The eyes of Ahasuerus rested upon her, his brow furrowed in curiosity, his features softened by the glow of wine and contentment born from the feast. "What is your wish, Queen Esther?" "It shall be given to you, even to the half of my kingdom," he proclaimed, as the assembled noblemen and officials leaned in, curiosity casting a shadow over the royal table. Haman, reclining confidently beside the king, wore a triumphant smile, oblivious to the storm brewing for him beneath the surface of Esther's tranquil demeanor. But in her heart, the words of Mordecai echoed truth, urging her onwards. "If it please the king," she began, her voice steady yet reverent, "Let the king and Haman come today to a feast that I have prepared for him." The king's eyes sparkled with delight at the prospect of another banquet, and Haman swelled with pride, thinking how his stature among the nobles would only increase. Yet, as she invited them, the weight of her mission pressed heavy upon her spirit, knowing that this gathering was but a prelude to unveiling the enemy of her people. As they feasted again, laughter and camaraderie filled the hall, the mood lightened by wine and sweet delicacies. Every morsel Esther partook tasted like ash as her heart throbbed with the unspoken truth she yearned to declare. But in God's perfect timing, she awaited the moment when the atmosphere would shift, a moment when truth would collide with darkness. With her heart lifted in silent prayer, she seized the moment as Ahasuerus turned his face to her again. "What is your wish, Esther? You need not fear, for you are my queen," he implored. Taking a breath filled with the very essence of courage, she said, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please you, grant me my life and the life of my people." A sudden hush fell over the banquet as Haman's smile faltered, a ripple of unease coursing through the gathering. "For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, I would have held my tongue, for our affliction is not to be compared with the loss of my people." Ahasuerus, starkly affected, turned to Haman, whose face had drained of color. "Who is this and where is he, who has dared to do this?" With the rapid beat of a heart emboldened by divine purpose, Esther answered, "A foe and enemy, this wicked Haman." Gasps rippled through the assembly as the revelation struck like thunder. The very foundation of their lifestyle quaked, shadows of despair mingling with hope as a glimmer of deliverance flickered on the horizon. Haman's fate was sealed by the very edict he had sought to impose upon Esther's people. As Haman fell before the queen in desperation, begging for his life, Esther stood resolute, eyes locked upon Ahasuerus, the king's wrath igniting like a furnace of justice. "You shall not silence my people," she declared, a clarion call echoing through the ages. But within the tempest, a divine mystery unfolded silently among the heavens. Little did they know, the turmoil that birthed their deliverance would soon kindle a covenant that would echo through generations, revealing the unfathomable depths of the Almighty's intention for both Israel and Persia. And therein lay the truth. God's hand was crafting a narrative far beyond their immediate sight, setting the stage for a revelation that would not only save a people, but weave the hearts of nations together through the tapestry of his enduring promise. What awaited Esther and her people was not merely survival, but divine purpose fulfilled, intertwined with the history of the world itself, an intricate design of God's sovereign plan yet to unfold. Esther's voice yet echoed through the chambers of the royal palace, weaving in and out of the hearts of those assembled as the king's wrath grew heavy in the air. "In whose hands lay the decree of death for my people?" Ahasuerus demanded, his face taut with anger, piercing Haman with fiery eyes. With the air thick with tension, Haman felt the ground beneath him quake, his heart racing in the face of fatal judgment. As he struggled to regain his composure, the room fell into a deep silence, wherein even the finest fabric of the court seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of a divine outcome. Ahasuerus stood, a king emboldened by his royal authority, not yet knowing the full scope of the treachery that had unraveled before him. "Take this man," he thundered, gesturing toward Haman, who had sunk to the floor, eyes wide with horror. "What shall be done with him?" Esther, filled with both righteous anger and the fear of the Lord, replied, "Let him suffer the same fate he has decreed for my people. Hang him upon the gallows he has prepared." Such a declaration sent tremors through the gathered crowd, a palpable sense of justice hanging over them like dark clouds pregnant with rain, ready to pour forth the heavy weight of the Almighty's judgment. "Hasten, my servants," Ahasuerus commanded, his voice grating against the silence. "Let it be known that no one shall rise against the chosen of the Lord." He turned toward Esther, the light of understanding dawning upon him. For who could dare to lay hands upon the queen and her heritage? As Haman was forcibly led away, a cacophony of murmurs flooded the hall, fear and relief mingling as the crowd felt the weight of divine intervention in motion. The king, in resolute authority, handed the signet ring to Esther, a symbol of trust, of new beginnings and the power to save her people. "Write thou also in the king's name to counteract the decree," he commanded. "Let the Jews be permitted to gather, to defend their lives, and let it be established in the provinces." The ring glinted in the candlelight, a herald of hope rising from despair. And as Esther penned words filled with grace and empowerment, she recalled the promise of God spoken through his prophets. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord," she whispered softly. "Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Jeremiah 29:11. Yet amid the profound turning of events, the attributes of the divine purpose began to shimmer like precious gold in the sun. Haman, now stripped of his power, stood as a figure of ego crushed, and from the gallows that bore his future, a new chapter was birthed for the people of God. In that moment, as the decree spread like wildfire through Shushan, a divine connection began to form. An intricate tapestry, weaving the fates of nations bound tightly in the hands of the one true God. Esther's courage marked the fertile ground for the generations yet unborn, her legacy anointed in faith that would ripple forward through history. But unbeknownst to them all, events unfolding were orchestrated for a purpose far greater than mere salvation from physical harm. What Esther and her people could not yet understand was that God was weaving a covenant that would unlock the hearts of many, not just within Persia but across the expanse of the known world, leading to a day when hope would spring forth in ways they could not yet imagine. And as the pages of history turned, the question reverberated quietly through the heavens, beckoning followers of the Almighty. What divine revelations shall make their entrance through the arduous journeys of those who dare to trust? The echoes of destiny awaited further unfolding, ready to take shape in the steadfast hands of Jehovah. And in the wake of Haman's downfall, as darkness began to recede and light pierced through the clouds of despair, Esther set forth with divine purpose. The decree of salvation swept across the provinces like a mighty river, drawing the hearts of the Jewish people together in a chorus of hope renewed. With the king's signet ring still warm in her grasp, she met with Mordecai, her beloved uncle, whose counsel had guided her every step. "Mordecai," she spoke with a voice resonant with the Spirit of God, "the time has come for us to take a stand. We are to gather our people, to be fortified in prayer and in unity as we await the day of deliverance." Mordecai, his heart both heavy and rejoicing, nodded in deep understanding. "Indeed, my daughter. For the Lord has raised you up for such a time as this, and we must proclaim his goodness to our scattered kin." The call was sent forth throughout Shushan. The multitude of the Jewish people gathered together in solemn assembly, their hearts beating in rhythmic anticipation. They sought the Lord with fasting and prayer, echoing the words of their ancestors. They cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. Psalm 107:6. As the days passed in prayer, the presence of the Lord enveloped the gathered assembly, bringing a profound sense of awe. Each soul was anointed with courage, emboldened by the very promises of God that stretched through generations. They recalled the faithfulness of their forefathers, how the Lord had delivered Noah from the flood and Sarah from barrenness, how Joseph rose to power in Egypt, and how Moses led the people through the desert with the hand of God guiding them. Yet even as hope rose, a shadow loomed upon the horizon. News spread through the towns and cities. Haman's allies stirred with malice, plotting retaliation against the Jewish people. A bitter wind of hatred encircled the land, invoking fear into the hearts of many. But Esther, emboldened by divine courage, approached the king once more. Clad in royal garments and draped with a mantle of prayer, she stood in the inner court, waiting in silence, a pearl of faith amidst fear. She prayed fervently, "O Lord, let your will be done. I plead for the lives of your people." Ahasuerus lifted his eyes and beheld her, the tremor of destiny trembling between them, for his heart was swayed by the beauty of her spirit and the righteousness of her cause. "What is your desire, Queen Esther? It shall be granted even to the half of my kingdom." With a heart poised in obedience to God, she replied, If it pleases the king, let us gather for a feast, and I shall reveal my request. The king, intrigued and compelled by her presence, called for a banquet, intent on learning the heart of the queen which he adored. And while Esther prepared to reveal her lineage, she understood that her impending words carried the weight of an entire nation. Fear was cast aside. Love and loyalty to her people surged in reverent anticipation. She knew within her being that God was orchestrating every intricate detail, and that she was but a vessel in his divine plan. Thus tension mounted as the dusk approached, the banquet filled with laughter and the clinking of goblets, masks of charm hiding a deeper plot of vengeance. And as the wine flowed and spirits were lifted, the faithful queen would soon declare the mystery that had knit together her heart and her people. What she did not yet know was that the very table upon which she dined could become the stage for a revelation, one that would transform not only the fates of the Jews, but also the heart of the king himself. Would Ahasuerus perceive the truth about the God she served? Would he choose to align with the destiny unfolding before him? The hour was near, and the tapestry of God's sovereign plan was about to be woven anew, as Esther prepared to step into the very moment that would seal her fate and reveal the divine purpose that lay in the heart of the nation. As the aromas of the feast filled the banquet hall, a mingling of sweet spices and rich sauces, Esther's heart raced with the gravity of her purpose. Surrounded by dignitaries and nobles, she felt the weight of every gaze upon her, a tapestry of expectation woven into the very fabric of the moment. The king, cloaked in his royal robes, observed her with curiosity, his mind ablaze with questions yet unspoken. The evening unfurled like the petals of a fragrant flower. Esther lifted her cup, not just a vessel of wine, but a chalice of her people's hopes. With a calm composure that belied the trepidation within, she turned her eyes towards Ahasuerus. If it pleases the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, let my life be granted me, and my people a reprieve. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. A stunned silence fell upon the room as if the very air around them held its breath. The words danced between them, unfurling the truth hidden in shadows. The king's brow furrowed, a twinge of confusion knitting his regal features. Who would dare presume such a thing? Who has filled your heart with such dread? Esther's resolve solidified amidst the uncertainty. The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman, she declared, pointing toward the man whose ambition had woven a tapestry of deceit. Her voice rose, slicing through the tension with divine clarity. This man seeks to destroy our lives purely out of spite, believing he can erase our covenant with the God of heaven. Gasps rippled through the assembly, as the bitter truth clung to the air. Ahasuerus recoiled from Haman, whose countenance shifted as betrayal painted his face. Esther felt hope surge within her, a powerful undercurrent rising amidst the storm of fear and fury. The king, consumed by wrath, stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. What shall be done to this man who would plot treachery against my queen and her people? His voice carried the command of a ruler awakening to injustice, his heart moving toward righteousness. The fates of Esther and her people hung in the balance, a single thread woven through the grand design of God's plan. Thus, days of prayer and fasting culminated in this call to truth, revealing the hidden machinations of Haman's heart. As the king contemplated retribution, a whirlwind of divine strategy enveloped the moment. In a swift motion, Ahasuerus summoned his guards. Bring me this Haman. Let justice be served. Esther watched as Haman's heart raced, knowing that retribution was now etched deeply into the fabric of their transpiring fates. The echoes of her people's prayers reverberated, intertwining with the fate of a king who, in his newfound conviction, found a path toward redemption. Little did Esther fully comprehend, yet the hand of God was revealing more than just a personal struggle. He was igniting a movement toward the restoration of his people, bringing to fruition promises long spoken through the mouths of prophets. As the sky grew darker, pregnant with the weight of destiny, the king returned his gaze to Esther, a newfound respect dawning upon his consciousness. What can be done to honor and protect you, my queen? Your faith has illuminated the path of our nation's deliverance." With every unfolding moment, the tapestry of salvation unfolded, revealing threads of divine intervention woven in grace, mercy, and justice. And as light began to pierce through the suffocating shadows, Esther sensed that the culmination of God's plan was upon them. But amid the blossoming hope, a profound enigma lingered. What promises lay hidden yet to be unveiled? How would Haman's doom unveil the depth of God's unwavering covenant with his people? And what transformations awaited the hearts of those in the king's court, forever altered by the hand of God? Indeed, a divine purpose was being penned in the annals of history, one that would echo through generations, as God prepared to fulfill a covenant more miraculous than any could foresee. The guards swiftly entered the banquet hall, their eyes alight with the urgency of the moment. Haman, realizing the impending storm, felt the ground shift beneath his feet. His heart raced as he was drawn forth, a man ensnared in his own wickedness, blind to the judgment that loomed. Ahasuerus, his face flushed with indignation, scanned the faces of his subjects one by one. "This man stands before me as a traitor. Let every heart discern the truth of his treachery, and let it be known throughout the kingdom." His voice reverberated through the hall, striking terror into the heart of Haman. In that charged atmosphere where hope and despair collided, Esther felt a surge of divine strength wash over her. "O king," she interjected, her voice unwavering, "let my people be remembered in this moment. For it is not only my life that hangs in the balance, but the very future of our lineage chosen by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." The tension thickened as the king turned his piercing gaze back to Haman. The once proud advisor, now reduced to insignificance, stammered in his desperation, "My lord, I only sought to elevate your kingdom. My intentions were for the good of the realm." But his words hung hollow in the air, exposed before all who could witness the unraveling of his deceit. "Your counsel has led to the decree of death," Ahasuerus retorted, his voice an unwavering decree of justice. "It is you who has plotted against my queen, and for this treachery, you shall not escape the consequences." Esther's heart quickened, knowing the weight of destiny pressed upon them. She could feel the eyes of the assembly fixed upon her, and the trembling heart of Haman, now spiraling in abrupt fear. A silence permeated the hall as all awaited the king's command. Would their fates change forever in this divine moment? In a startling flourish, the king summoned the scrolls containing the edicts of Haman. "Bring forth the decree," he ordered, motioning with authority for the parchment that had sealed their doom. Within moments the scroll was laid open, revealing the chilling declaration that had sown despair among the Jewish people. As Ahasuerus read, his fury intensified, a blaze ignited by righteousness in defense of Esther and her kin. "This shall be undone," he proclaimed, his voice echoing like thunder. Esther felt a burden lifting, her heart fluttering with hope as she grasped the gravity of the moment. The unfolding events whispered of providence, affirming God's steadfast promise to protect his chosen. As the king prepared to issue a counter-edict, she marveled at the divine orchestration of justice and mercy intertwining in that sacred arena. Yet amid the victory, revelation breathed a holy tension into the air. What fate awaited Haman, and who would carry the weight of this decree through the streets of Shushan? Was there a greater purpose in his downfall, a turn of events that would ripple through generations yet to come? As the final stroke of the king's command took form, a deeper understanding stirred within Esther. The God who had led her from obscurity to royalty was not done revealing the tapestry he was weaving. The promise to restore his people echoed in her spirit, resounding with the depth of divine purpose. Little did they know, the struggle was only beginning, the full measure of Haman's wickedness yet to be unveiled. The lives of all who served in the palace would pivot, caught in the wake of God's sovereign plan. What would the redemption of a people look like? And how would Haman's fate serve as a lens through which God's faithfulness would shine forth? Thus the stage was set for revelation. The time had come for God's covenant to stir into action as the pieces shifted on the board of history, a divine confrontation on the horizon that sought to fulfill promises written long before time itself began. And it came to pass that Ahasuerus, with a heart full of righteous anger, turned to his guards, commanding them, "Take Haman, the enemy of my queen and her people. Let him meet the justice he has wrought." The guards, swift in their obedience, seized Haman by the arms, dragging him from the royal presence. The assembly held its breath, for they witnessed the unraveling of a man once filled with pride and arrogance, now reduced to a mere shadow of his former self. In the wake of despair, Esther stood, her heart racing, intertwined with fear and faith. "O king," she called out, "what shall become of my people?" Her voice, though trembling, echoed with a plea that reached the very heavens. The eyes of the assembly moved like waves resting upon Esther's outcry, as if the air itself hung with the weight of destiny. Ahasuerus's brow furrowed deeply, and he turned to the scroll once more, his gaze scanning the ominous edict that had sealed the fate of the Jews. "Let it be known," he decreed, raising his voice with authority, "that Haman shall hang upon the gallows he fashioned for Mordecai, the very man who saved my life." With that pronouncement, the hall erupted in a mixture of gasps and whispers, reverberating through the hearts of all present, as they realized the stark reversal of fortune. Esther's heart soared with hope. In that moment, the unseen hand of God shaped the course of history. What a mighty reversal. "Thank you, O Lord," she whispered to herself, recognizing the divine intervention that guided her path and that of her people. And so it was that Haman was led forth, his countenance wild with horror and disbelief. Indeed, he grasped at the words of the king like a desperate man clinging to his last breath. "I did not intend to harm the queen. It has been the naivete of my counsel." But the king's heart hardened further against him. The path of wickedness leads only to self-destruction, a lesson etched into the annals of time. In a solemn procession, the king stood as a monarch of justice. "Shall we sit idly while the innocent suffer?" he proclaimed. "Our God shall not suffer the evil to go unpunished." And with those words, the guards took Haman to the gallows he had erected, and the heavens bore witness to this act of divine justice. Yet within Esther a turmoil of thoughts surged. What would come next? How might the edict against her people be undone? What becomes of those who had already been marked for death? Her heart raced as she realized there was still work for her to do, petitions yet to be made. With courage, she approached the king once more, her heart anchored in prayer. "O sovereign Ahasuerus," she beseeched, "may it please you to allow me to write in defense of my people. For though Haman's treachery is now silenced, the decree for our destruction still stands. Let us seek a new writing that may counteract the bitter one." And in those words, a tension hung palpably in the air, as the king, turning to his scribes, pondered the gravity of Esther's request. The sacred contest for survival continued, and the fate of an entire nation rested on their shoulders. Thus prompts arose from Esther's heart, a reminder of God's promises whispered across time. "For I know the plans I have for you," she recalled in her spirit, affirming the covenant of hope and restoration from the Most High. The resolve of Esther intensified as the moment of reckoning approached, knowing that greater revelations lay ahead. As the meeting concluded, an unseen dawn began to break through the clouds of despair. And in that sacred moment, destiny itself shifted yet again, revealing a grander design woven through the fabric of history. The echoes of God's faithfulness resonated deep within their hearts, illuminating the path forward in great expectation. Could it be that through the remnants of Haman's plot, a divine empowerment would spring forth, bringing to light the deliverance promised to those who trust in the Lord? Time would reveal all, as the story of redemption unfolded, waiting for the moment when the Most High would consummate his sovereign plan. And it came to pass that the king pondered deeply the plea of Esther, and summoned the scribes into his presence. In the chamber filled with the fragrance of frankincense and the low murmur of anxious hearts, King Ahasuerus commanded, "Write ye a new decree, one that may serve as a shield for the people of Esther, even the Jews, whose lives have been imperiled by the treachery of Haman." The scribes, swift of hand and eager of heart, began to carve the king's words upon the tablets of stone, their quills dancing like fleeting shadows. The decree was to be known throughout the provinces, a counter to the dark edict that had been sent forth by Haman, the enemy of the righteous. "Let it be proclaimed," continued the king, that the Jews may gather and defend themselves against any who would seek to harm them. Esther, with her heart full of longing and hope, waited as the words took shape, listening to the scribe's quill scratch upon the parchment like a whisper from heaven. Turning to Ahasuerus, she reverently asked, "O king, grant that the people may have their voices heard. Let them celebrate their triumph to remember the victory over their adversaries." "Aye, so it shall be," Ahasuerus replied, for he felt the stirrings of justice in his spirit. And so, Esther's brave heart swelled at this proclamation, for she knew, through her faithful God, deliverance was drawing nigh, weaving its way through the hearts of the people. As night cloaked the land, the decree was sent forth, encompassing the vast expanse of the kingdom, igniting hope among those who had been drenched in despair. The whispers of liberation flowed like a river through the streets, and joy began to take root in the hearts of men and women. The night became alive with prayers of thanksgiving and songs of deliverance, as the stars watched over the city, heralding the dawn of freedom. "Mordecai," Esther called, her voice a melody ascending towards the heavens as she sought her beloved uncle. When he approached, his face aglow with divine courage, she embraced him tightly, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "Our God has answered, O Mordecai. He has turned the heart of the king, and freedom shall come to our people." Mordecai, strong in spirit, garnished the moments of despair with words of promise. "Fear not, my niece, for the Lord is our refuge and strength. He shall not forsake his people." In those moments, Esther and Mordecai together stood as pillars of faith amid the tremors of fear, understanding that the fate of their people lay in God's grand tapestry of grace and mercy. Yet in the darkened corners of Persia, whispers of fear and tremors of vengeance spread among the enemies of the Jews. As they heard the decree that had gone forth, their wrath only intensified, stirring a tempest among them. Little did they know, the Almighty had set a divine trap, transforming their enmity into instruments of his sovereignty. As Esther and Mordecai prepared for the days ahead, the air grew thick with divine anticipation. Would their people rise in strength to defend themselves against the enemies who sought their demise? Would the deliverer be a warrior of flesh? Or might God choose once more to intervene in ways beyond human understanding? With servants dispatched and celebrations planned, the hearts of the Jews beat with the rhythm of faith, undergirded by the knowledge that their God was not distant, but intimately aware of their plight. Within the sacred folds of the heavens, his plans unfolded, each moment pregnant with purpose, weaving together the threads of history and promise. Could it be that through the ashes of Haman's plot, a greater narrative of salvation and identity would emerge, illuminating the depth of God's purpose for his people? As the new dawn approached, Esther clung to this hope, aware that the might of God's redemptive story yet awaited its glorious revelation. And it came to pass that the day upon which the Jews would defend themselves drew near, a day that had been marked by both dread and hope. The streets of Shushan pulsed with an unusual fervor, as the faithful stirred in prayer and preparation, their hearts turned towards the God of Israel, the one who had heard their cry and promised their help. Mordecai, adorned in the garments of mourning turned to garments of joy, walked through the throngs of people. His presence encouraged many as he proclaimed, "Gather, O children of Israel, for our deliverance is at hand. The Lord, our God, has spoken through the mouth of the king. Let us prepare our hearts and arms." The voices of the crowd rose like a symphony of faith, echoing his assurance. Meanwhile, Esther entered her inner chamber, her soul stretched between the weight of responsibility and the wings of divine possibility. There, she fell to her knees in fervent prayer, beseeching the Lord. "O Lord of hosts, if this is thy will, grant courage to them who shall rise against their oppressors. Let the hearts of the people be united as a shield against the coming storms." The divine clarity enveloped her as she surrendered her fears, resting in the providential hand of God. As the sun broke over the horizon, casting a golden hue upon the lands, news of the impending conflict reached Haman's loyalists. Their fury kindled further, and they gathered in secret councils, seeking to thwart the decree of Ahasuerus. "This is not merely a battle of men," they cried. "It is a war against the very decree of our king. We must strike before they can gather their strength. Yet unbeknownst to them, the Lord had already infused the hearts of the people with courage. The Jews, fortified by prayer and united by faith, stocked their homes with provisions and weapons, preparing not just for a fight, but for the deliverance of their very souls. The Spirit of the Almighty moved throughout the city, filling their hearts with a resolve that rivaled the tempest they faced. As the day approached, Esther summoned all the Jews of Shushan, declaring a solemn gathering. Let us come together, not just in arms but in spirit. Remember the covenant of our fathers, the promise that our God will never abandon his people. Today we stand, not for vengeance, but for life. The air was thick with intensity as they listened, the hope in her voice linking each soul to the infinite promise they shared. If I perish, I perish. But the lives of my people are worth every breath, she proclaimed, her words tracing the ancient path of faith they all knew. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the people of Israel prepared themselves, steeling their resolve for the coming strife. Their hearts beat as one, echoing the Psalms of David, their voices rising to the heavens. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Psalm 27:1. In the dark corners of the land, the plans of Haman brewed an iron storm, but God's providence was already at work among the beleaguered and oppressed. Even as the enemies of the Jews sought to fulfill their designs, the Lord was preparing a magnificent display of his power. For within his eternal plan, hidden within the fabric of their struggle, lay the truth of deliverance that would unfold beyond mortal understanding. Little did they know it was not just a battle for survival, it would be a testimony of faith, leading to a celebration that would echo through generations. What victory might await if God himself intervened in ways yet unseen? The stakes were high, but equally so were the promises that danced just beyond the veil of the known, woven by the Master's hand. In the quiet moments before the dawn of battle, an eternal truth loomed larger than all. The time had come for God's promise to be revealed, ushering in a new chapter of faith and fulfillment. And in the fateful hour when the decree of deliverance was set to unfold, the hearts of the Jewish people throbbed in unison, united under the banner of faith. The sun rose with a fiery brilliance, painting the horizon with hues of gold, a testament to the morning of hope that would not be extinguished. As the day broke, word spread through Shushan. The Jews gathered, crowned with the favor of the king and emboldened by the promises of God. They prepared not as those resigned to fate, but as warriors filled with divine purpose, ready to reclaim their lives and destinies. With Esther and Mordecai at the forefront, a new identity awakened within them. A people called forth from despair to declare the goodness of the Lord. "Stand firm, O children of Israel," Mordecai proclaimed as he addressed the throngs. "The Lord has granted us the power to act and defend our lives. Let us not falter, for we do not fight alone." His words ignited a flame of courage, reverberating through every heart in the assembly. With banners of faith raised high, the Jews prepared themselves for the appointed day. Esther, clothed in regal dignity but marked by humility, sought the Lord through fervent prayer, her spirit tethered to his divine assurance. "O God of Isaac and David," she implored, "grant us strength, grant us wisdom, and grant us victory this day." As the sun climbed higher, tension crackled in the air like an impending storm. The forces of Haman assembled with dark intentions, unaware that their own treachery would be their undoing. The wicked plans they forged to doom the innocent would be no match for the protection that cloaked those who stood with God. Esther, gripped by a sense of profound resolve, addressed her people once more. "This is our moment. Let us not be afraid. When the soldiers of wickedness come upon us, we shall remember who we are. We shall not cower but rise in strength and unity." When the day of reckoning arrived, the Jewish people stood poised at the thresholds of their homes, hearts beating fiercely against the tension of uncertain battle. As dawn turned to day, the first cries of Haman's loyalists echoed through the streets, demanding the Jews come out against them. Yet, in response, the faithful people united as one body, the covenant keepers, bound by promises that would not return void. With a fervent cry, the Jews surged forward, ready to confront their oppressors. In each hand, weapons forged from the courage ignited by Esther's faith, and in every heart, the infused spirit of the Almighty. Their very souls cried out in unity, declaring, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" Romans 8:31. And thus the confrontation began, a surge of righteous fury crashing against the waves of antagonism. Time seemed suspended in the weight of that moment, and it was there in the inertia that the truth of God's deliverance unfurled with passionate magnificence. The enemies who sought their demise met with an unexpected force, not just flesh and blood, but the vehemence of divine justice overtaking them. As trumpets rang out and shouts of victory filled the heavens, the tide turned decisively in favor of the chosen. Captains of despair found themselves scattered, their hearts gripped by bewilderment, as the tide of God's chosen people surged with overwhelming strength. Victory roared like a lion amidst the chaos as the Jews triumphed over those who had aligned themselves against the God of Israel. Haman's plot unraveled before the very eyes of those who conspired against the beloved of the Lord, and it was then that Esther came forth to declare the victory, each word echoing with the deep resonance of divine purpose fulfilled. "Look upon our deliverance, for the God who does not slumber nor sleep has intervened on our behalf," she proclaimed to a people now forever marked by the covenant of hope. And as the dust settled, the sounds of victory morphed into songs of praise, sweet melodies rising from the lips of the redeemed. The gallows that Haman had built for Mordecai became a testament to his own undoing, a dark prophecy fulfilled amidst the glorious light of God's unfolding plan. In the days that ensued, the Jews celebrated their deliverance with joyous festivals, proclaiming the mighty work of God. Each year, the festival of Purim became a sacred remembrance of God's faithful hand, intricately woven through despair into triumph, and the strength derived from a queen who dared to stand in the gap for her people. From the echoes of Esther's courage to the pages penned with divine intention, the covenant woven in that season solidified a legacy of faith for generations. Thus, the tale of Esther lives on, a beacon of hope lighting the path for all who would dare trust in the unfailing nature of the Almighty. And as we close this sacred chapter, let us be emboldened by the unchanging nature of our God, who sculpts destinies and orchestrates deliverance. Would you, dear friend, now take the mantle of faith upon your own life? If you are blessed by this powerful narrative, you need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word and begin your journey through more incredible stories of faith. Leave a like now to help spread God's truth through the algorithm, allowing others to see His light. The world needs voices of hope like yours. Comment your reflections on this story and how it has impacted your faith. And don't wait even one more second. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear about God's faithfulness and love. Together we can illuminate darkness with the light of Christ.